Hello, everybody. I am Sarah Shewey. I'm the founder and CEO of Happily. Happily, in case you didn't know, is a global events company that produces carbon zero events. And with the largest and most diverse network of event specialists in the world. And every week I ask a friend and a colleague to join me in a conversation about things that are happening in their lives, our lives. And I'm really just have a really special place in my heart for Helen Huang, who's here today. Helen and I actually met randomly at a screening room in Soho House in Los Angeles. Do you remember, Helen?
I do,
How cute. And
yeah.
right, and I was working at TED back in the day, and they sent me to this thing, and everyone was much more important than me. I had to say that was when people didn't know what TED was. and and I sat next to you, and I sat next to Helen, and she was just so nice and just listened to what I had to say about my thoughts about the screening that we just saw and what I was doing with, she was interested in me and my life and my business. And it was just so different than the conversations that you usually have at one of these entertainment industry things. And I don't know who that lady is or was, but she was amazing. And turns out that Helen is a badass. And Helen sent me, I would ask everyone for their bios because it's so funny because I'm friends first with most people that I bring up. And I was like, wow, man, Helen, your bio is really impressive. Just and so as I gave you titles of I really think that Helen is a trailblazer, and in such really important ways that kind of ties into social justice, and it's really exciting to be able to be in conversation with you or in and around you. Helen was the first Asian American, female or male, right? Or first female Asian American executive in acquisitions for a studio network for Showtime, where she acquired over 1,500 pieces of content, which blows my mind. And something that I love that you included in your bio, Helen, was that you were responsible for bringing the Women's History Month program to Showtime. And I think that speaks volumes to, I asked Helen to join us because she has left Showtime. We were talking about just going indie and the transition from a big corporate thing to doing your own thing. And I think that usually when people are founders of new companies, especially when you leave a job where you have so much impact, and it's so important, it's what you were doing at Showtime. It's because your passion and your core is just call you, and the impulse for that is stronger. And so now Helen has founded a company called Enrich Fiscal Fitness, of which I have been happily a beta tester for quite a few years. And then recently, Enrich Fiscal Fitness empowers women in particular with the knowledge and the tools to be able to take control of their financial well-being. And I actually, after I got married this year, I asked Helen if she would do a fiscal fitness experience for me and my husband. And that was, just so great of an experience to just have with Helen. So maybe I have so many things to say, and I'm sure you have so many things to say. I'd love to first, Helen, give you the floor and invite you to tell us your own story and your own journey for Enrich, and why you started this, and how is Enrich different than maybe what other people might know or expect from a program that helps them get in charge of their finances.
That's a lot. Well, I started teaching women personal finance about 5 or 6 years ago.
through Enrich Fiscal Fitness workshops. And it was born out of a lot of reasons, but primarily women get the short end of the stick economically in our nation still. Women, as most people know, the average woman makes 82 cents to the average man's dollar. And so we're still about 20% behind in the economic wage gap. And then when you break it down by gender and race, it's worse for some racial breakdowns and a little bit better for others. But what we see in general is the story of women and their finances isn't pretty. Women are 80% more likely than men to retire in poverty. That's a really, really big problem. And if you think about it, it goes back into the history of our society, because it wasn't until the 60s that women were allowed to open their own bank account. It wasn't until the 70s that women could open their own credit card separate from their husband. So they could be denied a credit card by banks until the 70s, until about 1974. So women who were preceding this generation of women obviously didn't have as much control over their financial well-being. And so they couldn't learn it from each other, and they couldn't teach it, and they couldn't share the knowledge down through the generations. So my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother wouldn't be able to teach my great-great-great-grandmother, who wouldn't be able to teach my great, and so forth, until the 60s, when women started to really work and enter the workforce in mass in the 70s. This wasn't as extraordinary a problem. But now, where we are today, we don't have, well, your generation doesn't have Social Security guaranteed to them. Pensions have gone away. Dual income households are more normal, and yet a lot of women, single working women or married working women, don't know how to invest their own money. So only about 26% of women are invested in the financial markets. That's 1 in about 5 women invest in stocks and bonds, which is a big problem. And the reason is because women don't know how to invest. A lot of women don't know how to invest, and they don't feel comfortable investing. So they're just saving their straight dollars, which means their dollars are not compounding interest and not growing or appreciating via assets that they've invested in. And so for me, the inequity is a real problem, and I can't fix the system. I personally have no ability to affect whether or not women are paid equitably, but I do have the ability to teach women what to do with their money once they've made it. And so it's really important to me that I share my knowledge that I've earned as the daughter of immigrant parents. I grew up watching my parents learn about money. We went from poverty to financial comfort in the time that I was raised from child to adult. And I independently have taken myself from a insecure financial position to a very secure position. And so all of the things that I've learned in real estate investing, in stocks and bonds, investing in the different tax and insurance worlds that we live in, as well as my career at Showtime and at other companies, I put into a program to teach women very basic financial literacy. No matter how smart and educated you are, as a female, a client of mine, if you don't know what you don't know, I'm here to teach you. So that's like a really long-winded way of describing why it's important that it exists. And what I do is basically educational coaching.
I mean, it's so important because, like you said, there's just the chips are stacked up against us, right? Like it's not common. Like I can't think of, most conversations that I have with like my friends, male or female, where we're talking about money and stocks and all this stuff. Meanwhile, my husband is talking about stocks all day long. He's on Reddit channels talking about stocks all day long, and it's like a fun thing. And I'm like, how is this fun? Like, what are you doing? It's just different, right? It's a totally different, a different culture. And it's one of those, and I feel like it does still feel like a boys club where it's not, even with Coco's very pro femme, person. He's not like, oh, here, let me teach you. Right. And then there's a little bit of shame, like, asking like, what does that mean? Or how does that work?
Right. And there shouldn't be, it's gender, it's gender education and gender norms that prevent us from being able to get the information and the education easily in our day-to-day lives.
And that's why I really loved the idea when you first told me about Enrich. I was like, oh, that's fantastic. And I can just do it with other women, where it's like, it just feels like a safer place. And it's also like, it's just great to share information, with other women and be in a community. I mean, all the women that I've met through you are just delightful, like super ambitious, like unique individuals. And everyone's was so interesting was that like being with other women and just like the camaraderie of the experience. We learned more about just you. It's just so funny how you learn so much about people's decision making, within their life and their personalities in such a deeper way by the way that they have their relationship, to their finances. And I think it's really a powerful experience. And do you do things like still with just with like groups of women, or are you doing them like more like one-on-one coaching? How has that evolved?
It's really evolved. It started out constructed pre-pandemic. It started out constructed as an in-home groups of friends experience. So one friend would host her friends in her living room or at the kitchen table once a month, and I would come in for a year and teach the group every month, something new. So whether it was about negotiating for a higher salary, or whether it was about understanding the insurance policies and the contracts, and what you need and what you don't need, and how to assess whether or not it's too expensive, or whether it was the right transfer of risk. Whatever I was teaching about, real estate or relationships or the cost of dating, we were doing it in a casual in-home setting. And then because a year is a really long commitment for Los Angelinos in particular, but also, I mean, it's just a long commitment. I started doing just pop-up done in a day workshops. You didn't get the whole program, obviously. You got just the introduction to compound interest and traditional versus Roth savings, and a little bit about mortgages, and a lot about budgeting. But in those pop-up workshops, they were just one and done. They just didn't feel really robust enough. So now I have pop-ups, I have the full program, I have a 3-day, spread out over 4 weeks each. And I also do one-to-one coaching. And now, because of you and Coco, I am available for couples coaching.
Oh, yay! Highly recommended service. Let me just tell you that, like, first thing you should do after your honeymoon is over is call Helen and just talk about. What was great is like that first experience that we had with you was all about like our relation, like Coco defining his relationship with finances, and we found that he's a saver, and my relationship wasn't about like me being a spender, because I don't think I'm a crazy spender, but it was about me more being like, I'm just gonna make a bunch of money, like it was like that's what I'm focused on, and he's focused on like taking what he has and like saving it away, and just understanding that from both sides was unlocked the ability for us to have really healthy, pleasant conversations about our finances, what we were going to spend tomorrow, as well as like 6 months, 6 and 60 years. I mean, it was great. So I'm so glad that you're doing it.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure to see your couple dynamic. It's so lovely. And it was also a really wonderful exercise for me to not be a mediator, because I don't judge, but just to point out to both of you what I was seeing and how I would suggest that you move forward as you plan your financial life to afford the life that you wanted together. And so, like, for me, it was really a wonderful experience. And I'm glad that we had those 4 sessions together. It really was it was a highlight every time.
Oh, I mean, for us too, you like changed our world. Because I mean, divorces happen, you know, a lot of times because of money issues, right? And also, by the way, like if you are just cohabiting with a partner, I feel like that also, you know, just that can really help, even for folks who are just, you know, on their way. You don't have to be like married and like do all that stuff. But yeah, and it's you know, Coco and I moved to Taiwan, and I found out that you're from Taiwan, right?
I
And
mean, I'm Taiwanese ethnically in some part of me. I'm
but
also
you were
Cantonese
you
and
born in
Mandarin
America?
and
Oh
Hakka.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh really? So, oh yeah, yeah. So were you born in America or in Hong
America.
Kong?
I'm ABC.
Oh wow, that's so your parents came a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah, they met in America. So they immigrated as differently at different times as students, and then they met because my mom's sister was dating my dad's best friend,
Oh
and
my
so
gosh, that's
they met over mahjong.
oh my gosh, that's adorable. That's so cute. It really resonated with me when you said earlier that, you know, you came from, you learned about finance by watching your immigrant parents, like, you know, move up. And, you know, my dad is white. He's from West Virginia. My mom is Korean, and she immigrated from Korea when she was 15. And they were not wealthy at all, you know? And so I remember like I had to, like I was like, can I please learn how to balance the bank statements and write checks at like the age of 7, because I just saw the stress and the pressure, you know, of money in our family. And you know, I tell this often, but like when I decided to start my own business, my mom was like very upset. She was like, no, go be an executive. She wanted me to be you, because I was actually because I got a degree in film at SC, and I was working for Gervitz at Brillstein, and I was working for Zumas at Dimension Miramax, and so they were like, "You're on a path for." Like for just climb that studio ladder. And I was like, oh man, like that is rough. I mean, props to you for climbing that ladder. Like, holy, you must have stories like back and forth. But they were like, no, it's like so volatile, like, you know, being a founder, like your money, and like, and it has been 100%, like, you know, up and down, you know. And but I don't know. I just like I have never made because I never came from like a lot of money. I never made all my decisions about my life or decided to do things just so that I could like increase my percentage of money and my whatever, this or that, right? So
There's
that's also what.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No.
There's a really famous study about money and happiness. It's like super, super famous. I think it was the Pew Research Center that did it. But there's just a point in income, an annual income, that you aren't going to be made any happier if you're making more. And it's a lot lower than people think. So, I mean, adjusted for LA, the cost of living in LA, it's higher than across the US. But around the US, if your household brings in about $75,000 a year, then bringing in like $80,000, $90,000, $150,000, $200,000, that won't affect your emotional like happiness anymore. But if you start out poor or lower class and you can't afford the cost of living in your city, you can't afford to send your kids to like an activity, there is like an increase in happiness from a lower level up to that income point. But once your household income reaches that level, and in LA, it's around $95,000. It's a little bit more than that, $95,000 a year for household income. But then it's not about your emotional happiness. It doesn't affect it. It does affect your life evaluation satisfaction. The more money you make, it still has a direct incline. The more money you make, the wealthier you get, the more you're likely to think that you've had a good life. But past like a certain household income, it doesn't actually affect your happiness. So like I would say if it was meaningful to you to not be confined to a corporate construct or to be part of someone else's organization, working for the bottom line of that organization, if it was better for you emotionally to be in charge of your own business and to suffer the slings and arrows of like in the financial insecurity of entrepreneurship for a while until you got it to the point where you have it now, I think that's a better choice. It's just as challenging to be in an organization as it is to start your own business in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I don't regret it, not a single day. There are days where I'm like, oh, I can't wait until I sell this company and go work for somebody else. And I like clock in my vacation hours, baby. That is like my new work goal is to like
Don't
have
forget to
vacation
peel
hours.
off a percentage of the salary you pay yourself and invest it. Don't forget.
No. I'm like 100% calling you. Like, trust me. But with happiness, I mean, look, there's like all these billionaires, right, are like giving away their money, at a certain point because it's not going to do anything else for them. And I've always, and with Coco, we had this conversation. It was like we should kind of just stay like a little bit better than where we're at, but like everything else, like out to all the nonprofits and the artists and the scientists and the academics that like are doing the really hard work that are like not recognized. Like I'm glad he's with me on that plan because it's just, just, I don't know, just feels better, I guess.
Yeah, if it's your primary value to give back and make the world a better place, then giving as you go and giving as you grow is a really, really commendable method. And for other people, it's better for them to secure themselves for their futures first and then give what's excessive in their income or their wealth. But as long as you give, as long as you are giving back at some point in your life, I think it's better for you. I think it's better for every individual to be connected to their society and to their larger community and to feel the power of giving. But that doesn't always have to be financial. There are so many people who really cannot afford to be giving financially. There are so many people who really are not making enough to set aside enough to make themselves secure for their future. And so I think to acknowledge that, it's really important that it can't be an overall prescription for what
100%.
What is community effort or giving or generosity of spirit. But it is really good that you do what you do. I shouldn't be making a qualifying judgment about it, but I mean, I would commend you for it.
Oh, well, I've been on the board for Dublab, which is a nonprofit radio station for many years, and there were some years where I was like, I don't have any money to give to you right now, man. I'm sorry, I'm just like not there, but put me to work, and
yeah, that's right.
Sometimes it's honestly like more helpful than giving money, and I think that actually, one thing that's really interesting is that 90% of the people at Happily are women, and over 90% of them have listed that they are part of a nonprofit. They're actively volunteering with a nonprofit. So this is just, I think this is a really interesting thing to see how you've tapped into sort of like, we all know that like women socialize and we network and we support each other, but like dropping in that financial piece of things it is really empowering. I love that you call yourself a chief empowerment officer because it's really, really true.
Thank you. It's really important to me when you lift up women, you improve the quality of life for everyone because they will increase the quality of life within their home and within their community. And so it was like with the microloans that the United Nations or Kiva, would do. They studied the communal and long range ripple effect of helping financially empower women. And it's I don't know the numbers, but it's impressive. I remember realizing that for every one female that I help through education, I'm actually helping like 10, 20 people down the line. Because she'll share with her friends, she will share with her children, she will share with her husband or boyfriend or girlfriend or wife or parents. She will be a force of sharing and multiplying that information and that advice. And then we will catch up economically, or at least solve some problems in our own lives.
Yes, we will.
Nice.
Absolutely. along the way, right?
I thought a lot about it when I was starting, because I had a lot of reservations. I thought, who am I? I mean, I really didn't have imposter syndrome. It sounds like it, but okay, maybe it was the same thing. But I just felt unqualified in the beginning. Like 6 years ago, I thought, or 8 years ago, I thought I shouldn't be the person. I mean, it's all out there. It's in books. It's at school. People can hire certified financial advisors or planners. They can ask their immediate circle. And then, because I had so many friends asking me how I had become financially secure, asking me what it was that I was doing, and these friends were all professional women with college educations, I did realize that even though it's out there, it's easier for women to ask their immediate circle, or to be brought in by their immediate circle to somebody who can teach them. There was just something more comforting and safe about that. And so then I got a certificate in financial management from Cornell online while I was working at Showtime, because I thought it would teach me what I needed to teach, but it was a mistake, because that wasn't what I needed to teach. I needed to teach basic financial grammar to women. So like I just had to go back to basics with my workshops, because when I thought about how I accumulated my own wealth, it was really, really, really basic information. It was just constantly applying financial fluency with concepts that I understood well. So I try to teach people so they understand well, but among their friends, so that their friends can help them. Because we talk about things like, when you're a bridesmaid and the woman who's getting married forces you to spend this much on your hair, this much on your dress, this much on your nails, where is she going to go get married means you have to pay for a flight and a hotel and the parties, the engagement parties, the bridal showers, the bachelorette weekends. It's expensive. And if you have a lot of friends, it's very expensive. And if they all have destination weddings and you really want to be there, it becomes very expensive and you don't have enough vacation time. We talk about little things like that, just like that'll pop up, or we'll talk about family, or we'll talk about really, really traumatic things that affect our ability to govern our financial lives. And so that conversational style that is part of my teaching a workshop, I think is like the most important thing. It's the most important part of it. It's getting women together. So during 2020 pandemic, it was difficult. I didn't want to do it over Zoom, so I didn't, which I'm not happy about. I didn't really teach a lot of women last year, but this year, as we hopefully emerge from the pandemic, I'll be getting back out there and training women to teach what I teach, so that we can expand our reach.
Ooh, lovely. Well, like, count me in for that. Like, I will carve the time to be one of those people. I love that.
Love that. I would love that. So, but first you have to go through the program.
I have to go through the whole thing. Yeah, the whole thing. I know, because I'm always like, oh, I'm like so busy. Like, give me this and give me that, But no, I really, but I see that like going through the entire program will benefit me in so many ways. I just learned so much, and have such a good time. And it's like there's this peace and confidence that you have from knowing, like, knowledge is power, right?
Yeah. I mean, so much of it is all about your ability to trust in yourself. So much about it is being able to trust in the safety of your life for now and for the future. Although I do have a lot of members of Enrich Fiscal Fitness community who are like natural risk takers, and they're naturally bold, and they are exciting and interesting women who are less concerned about safety and risk than I am for them. But for me, it would be meaningful to me if I were part of the reason that a lot of other women didn't retire in poverty. Or
that statistic of 80% more likely to be in poverty, more likely than men to be in poverty at retirement, is such that's a number I hadn't heard before, and that's pretty devastating.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so we have this antiquated notion of caregivers, right? The caretaking of people should be done by like the women of the household, or the nurses, like the nurses mentality, that image of nurses, like, or that the housekeepers and the daughters of ailing parents, and the mothers of sick children. We have this antiquated notion it's the woman who has to do it, but that's the way that it practically works. 92% of healthcare workers are women in the low wage industry. Like, women do the laundry. Women are the majority of people in the laundry industry. Women are the majority of 8 of the 10 lowest paid sectors. And so women's work, it really isn't valued as much as men's work. And
oh yeah, I mean, the being in the events world, let me tell you about this, Helen, because it's like everyone's like, oh, you're that events girl, I don't know what you do, or it's just like, it's so like, I'm like, babe, like, now that we're in quarantine, don't you wish that don't you realize like how much we provide to your lives? Like, it's the community building and everything. Well, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today, and also for coming at a time and when it's just hard, I think, to show up. But I really appreciate that you showed up today, and just to talk with women, because, like, as Beyonce says, always stay gracious. The best revenge is your paper. Make sure that, ladies, let's get information, and let's make that money. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. I'm sorry I had so much to say.
I know, but follow Helen on LinkedIn, go to enrichfiscalfitness.com. Helen can talk about like so many different things, and it's always just a pleasure and a joy. I'll check in with you again later.
Thank you.
Thanks.